Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. Sonia and Mike had been married for 13 years. They were the picture of a loving couple. From the outside, their life seemed perfect. Sonia was a successful event planner, known for her keen eye for detail and her ability to create memorable experiences for her clients. Mike, on the other hand, was a dedicated software engineer who had just been promoted to a leadership role in his firm. Together, they had built a comfortable life, complete with a beautiful house in the suburbs, and two golden retrievers, Rusty and Bella. But beneath the surface of their well-crafted life, cracks had begun to form, unnoticed by anyone but Sonia herself. It started innocently enough with distance. Mike's new position demanded long hours, late nights, and frequent travel. He was thrilled about the promotion, and Sonia was happy for him at first. But as the weeks turned into months, Mike seemed to become more of a shadow than a partner. He'd come home exhausted, barely able to keep his eyes open long enough to hear about her day. Dinners turned into quiet affairs, punctuated by the soft sounds of silverware scraping plates. And on most nights, he'd be asleep before she could even join him in bed. Loneliness seeped into Sonia's life like water through a crack in a dam. She tried to fill the void with her work, diving into projects and planning elaborate events. She joined a yoga class, rekindled her love for painting, and spent more time with her friends, who sympathized with her about Mike's absence. But none of it filled the emptiness she felt growing in her heart. She missed the man she'd fallen in love with, the man who used to surprise her with impromptu weekend getaways, who would make her laugh until her sides hurt, and who could never go a day without telling her how much she loved her. One evening, Sonia was at an event she had organized for a high-profile client, a charity gala for the city's elite. She was managing the crowd, ensuring every detail was flawless. When she met Jesper, he was a guest at the event, a successful architect with an easy smile and a charisma that seemed to draw people in effortlessly. He complimented her on the event, and they struck up a conversation. Jesper was attentive and charming, and Sonia found herself drawn to him in a way she hadn't felt in years. He was genuinely interested in her, asking about her work, her hobbies, and her life. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen. As the night wore on, they continued to talk. Sonia felt herself opening up, sharing stories and dreams she hadn't thought about in years. She realized with a pang that she hadn't spoken to anyone like this since Mike had started his new job. When the event was over, Jesper asked for her number. Hesitating only a moment, Sonia gave it to him. She told herself it was harmless, just a friendly connection. They exchanged a few texts in the following days, light-hearted and innocent, discussing books and movies, sharing stories of their lives. But with every message, Sonia felt a spark reigniting inside her, a spark she had thought long extinguished. The turning point came a few weeks later, when Jesper invited her for coffee. It was a chilly Saturday morning, and Mike was away on a business trip. Sonia accepted the invitation, convincing herself it was just coffee between friends. But when she saw Jesper waiting for her at a cozy cafe, his eyes lighting up when he spotted her, she felt a thrill she couldn't deny. They talked for hours, losing track of time as they shared their thoughts, their pasts, and their hopes for the future. Sonia was captivated by his warmth, his humor, and the way he made her feel like the only person in the world. After that coffee date, their meetings became more frequent. Lunches turned into dinners, and dinners turned into long, lingering walks through the city, where Jesper would brush his hand against hers, sending a jolt of electricity up her spine. Sonia knew she was playing with fire, but she couldn't bring herself to stop. She had spent so long feeling invisible, starved for affection, that Jesper's attention felt like a lifeline. One evening, after an especially intimate dinner, Jesper invited her back to his apartment. Sonia hesitated, torn between guilt and longing. She thought of Mike, the man she had promised to love and cherish. But then she thought of all the nights she had spent alone, all the time she had waited for a text or a call that never came. She followed Jesper to his apartment, And that night she crossed a line she could never uncross. Jesper unlocked the door, and as it swung open, the warm, inviting space inside seemed like a different world, separate from the life she'd been leading, untouched by her obligations, her regrets, or her routine. Inside, Jesper turned to her, his eyes soft, yet intense, as though asking for her final consent. She felt his hand on her cheek, his thumb brushing lightly against her skin, sending a shiver down her spine. All of the loneliness she'd harbored, the yearning for connection, seemed to come to a head in that moment. As they moved closer, Sonia felt a release, a moment of surrender that was both terrifying and freeing. Jesper's touch was gentle, but sure, his attentiveness something she hadn't felt in so long. They took their time, each movement deliberate, allowing Sonia to feel seen, desired, and connected in a way that felt achingly foreign. She was captivated by the warmth of his embrace, the way he seemed to be present with her, in a way that she had been missing at home. The intensity of the night filled her, with a rush of sensations she hadn't felt in years. In Jesper's arms, she felt the excitement of rediscovery, and the bittersweet realization of what she'd been seeking all along, to feel alive, cherished, and understood. As dawn approached, Sonia lay awake beside Jesper, staring into the quiet darkness, the weight of what had happened settling into her. She felt simultaneously fulfilled and hollow, knowing she had experienced something beautiful yet irrevocable, something she would carry with her from that day forward, a choice that would reshape everything. Their affair continued in secret for months. Each time they were together, Sonia felt both exhilarated and guilty, caught between the thrill of rediscovering herself and the shame of betraying her husband. She knew it was wrong, but part of her couldn't help but feel that Mike had already left her in every way that mattered. In Jesper's arms, she found the passion and connection she had been missing. He made her feel alive, vibrant, and cherished. But secrets have a way of surfacing, and Sonia's affair was no exception. One evening, Mike returned from a business trip earlier than expected. Sonia hadn't been answering his calls, and he was worried. When he walked through the door, he found her sitting on the couch, lost in thought. There was an unfamiliar look in her eyes, a mix of sadness and regret. He tried to ignore it, chalking it up to exhaustion. But as the days passed, he began to notice small changes. She was distant, distracted, and her phone seemed to be glued to her hand, with messages she would quickly hide. Whenever he came near, Mike's suspicions grew, and he began piecing together the signs he had ignored. One evening, he decided to confront her, hoping to dispel his fears. But when he looked into her eyes and asked if there was someone else, Sonia couldn't bring herself to lie. She confessed, tears streaming down her face, telling him about Jesper and the loneliness she had felt. In their marriage, Mike was devastated. The woman he had loved, the life they had built together, all felt like a lie. He couldn't understand how Sonia could betray him. And in that moment, his pain turned into anger. He demanded to know everything, every detail of the affair. She told him, desperate to explain, to make him see that it hadn't been a simple betrayal, but a consequence of a marriage that had slowly unraveled. But Mike couldn't forgive her. The trust they had built, the bond they had shared, felt irreparably shattered. In the weeks that followed, their home became a silent battleground. They barely spoke, and when they did, it was with resentment and blame. Mike tried to understand, to see if there was a way to salvage what was left of their marriage. But every time he looked at her, he saw the betrayal. The night she had spent with someone else. He began staying at work later, avoiding her, just as she had once felt avoided by him. Eventually, they decided to go to counseling, hoping a neutral party could help them navigate the pain. But even with a therapist's guidance, their sessions were filled with bitterness and hurt. Mike couldn't let go of the betrayal, and Sonia couldn't undo the choices she had made. She apologized repeatedly, told him she regretted it, but deep down, she knew that a part of her didn't. Jesper had reminded her of who she was, had helped her see that she was more than just a wife, waiting for her husband to come home. Months passed, and despite their efforts, the trust that had once bound them together was gone. Mike filed for divorce, and Sonia moved out of their home. It was a painful end to a marriage that had once been full of love and promise. In the aftermath, Sonia and Jesper drifted apart as well. Their affair had been built on loneliness and escape, not the foundation needed for a lasting relationship. When the dust settled, Sonia was left alone, forced to confront the choices she had made and the consequences they carried. Looking back, she realized that her affair had been a symptom of a larger problem, a marriage that had slowly withered under the weight of neglect and unspoken needs. She had looked outside her marriage for something she should have fought to rebuild with her husband. And while she had found moments of happiness with Jesper, they came at the cost of a love that could never be mended. In the end, Sonia learned a hard lesson about love, loyalty, and the choices we make when we feel unseen. Her marriage was a casualty of her own actions, and as she looked out at the world, as a single woman once again, she vowed to never lose herself in the quiet spaces between her heart and the one she chose to love. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.